It's their leaders that you wonder about. They do know better, or they should. And when they talk about this new iteration of scientific racism, when they talk about whiteness, they sound very much like old-fashioned bigots. Take this guy, for example. His name is Eric Michael Dyson. He's a tenured professor at some stupid college or other. He lives in a rich, almost exclusively white neighborhood. He goes on television a lot. Watch him as he talks about race and ask yourself, honestly, if he sounds any different at all from, say, Bull Connor or David Duke. He doesn't. Only the colors have changed. Here he is.
And speaking about, the maggots, the MAGA, that is so corrosive in this, political moment. And we have stood by to see mediocre, mealy-mouthed, snowflake white men who are incapable of taking critique, who are willing to dole out infamous repudiations of the humanity of the other, and yet they call us snowflakes, and they are the biggest flakes of snow to hit the earth. They are incapable of criticism. They are incapable of tolerating difference. They're scared of, oh my God, critical race theory is going to kill your mother. And they don't even know. They're not critical. They have no race, and they don't understand theory.
White men, they're the problem. You hear that so often. That you don't pause to consider what a change this is. It used to be only a few years ago that the one thing you couldn't do in America was attack people in public on the basis of their race. I don't like that group because of their skin color. Let's hurt them. You couldn't say that. It was the one unacceptable thing, and for very good reason. You cannot maintain a multiracial democracy unless people of every color have exactly the same rights and responsibilities under the law and are considered of precisely the same moral value under God. You have to have that. That's the most basic prerequisite for a multiracial democracy. All lives have to matter, or it cannot work. It's pretty clear that our leadership class, for whatever reason, doesn't want it to work. Obviously, they don't. Look at what they're doing. When you hear people ascribe blood guilt to a specific racial group, when you hear them talk about the sin of whiteness, what you're watching is the death of our future as a country. We can't live in a nation of warring tribes. We know very well what that looks like, because it's the history of the world. It's miserable and vicious and bloody. We can't allow that. Most Americans of all colors on some level understand this. They don't always have the words to articulate it, but they know it. When their kids come home from school with assignments that suggest that all races are not, in fact, equal, that some races are guilty and some are innocent, that some groups are oppressors inherently and others are inherently oppressed, in the universities, this is called critical race theory. So that's
critical race theory. Critical race theory, CRT, is an academic movement of civil rights scholars and activists in the United States who seek to critically examine U.S. law as it intersects with issues of race in the U.S. and to challenge mainstream American liberal approaches to racial justice. CRT examines social, cultural, and legal issues as they relate to race and racism in the United States and, more recently, England, Canada, and Australia. CRT originated in the mid-1970s. In the writings of several American legal scholars, including Derek Bell, Alan Freeman, Kimberly Crenshaw, Richard Delgado, Cheryl Harris, Charles R. Lawrence III, Mari Matsuda, and Patricia J. Williams. CRT emphasizes how racism and disparate racial outcomes can be the result of complex, changing, and often subtle social and institutional dynamics, rather than explicit and intentional prejudices on the part of individuals, rather than explicit and intentional prejudices on the part of individuals,
rather than explicit and intentional prejudices on the part of individuals.
That's the term that most people go with. Critical race theory. That's what we so often debate on television. That's the clip we just showed you. But critical race theory is an inaccurate way to describe what's happening. Like so much academic jargon, the phrase critical race theory doesn't mean anything. It obscures rather than illuminates. It is designed that way. It is designed to confuse you. What's happening in our schools and our military and our government is both simpler and easier to recognize than that. It's not critical race theory. It's racism. Not neo-racism or reverse racism. Those are meaningless terms. It is race hate. It is peddled by the people in charge in the hope that it will make them more powerful. That's all it is. We haven't said that often enough or clearly enough. And because we haven't, because we've been tied up in some pointless debate about a concept that nobody can actually define, the race hate, and that's what it is, has oozed from the universities and it has infected the entire country, including